Hello Potheads, I'm Sarah Gunther and this is my channel, Peanut Pottery. Today we're going to be talking about wedging, pug meal, and throwing. I hope that you stick around and let's get to it. Alright, so once I put the clay in the bag, after it's been sitting out for a little while, it's pretty mushy, sitting in the water after I threw it. So it's sitting in there. I got some hefty clay in there. It's trying to break down after being so dry. So after it's in there, I put it in the bag, as you can see, and it's formed up way more so that I can grab it, and I'm gonna put it on the board. I put it actually over here on my drying board. Let it sit out. Get some more of this. Sounds pretty gross if I'm being honest, but okay, that's pottery, huh? Then I'm gonna get my pretty dry one. It's kind of hard to even pull it apart. I'm gonna use my cutoff wire right here that's already attached to my board. Thankfully, I got this at Old Ash Artisans. So go ahead and check them out. They're a really good company. So I'm just gonna pull that off, place it on here, kind of push it down a little bit. Oof. Watch your eyes. Get my wet stuff, just a little bit because you don't want it to be too wet altogether. Push it in there, nice and even. And then get another slab, and poke it down.
I was wrong to say I wouldn't change a thing, 'cause in the story of our lives, the best of times through color glass, time rolls on enough.
All right, so now we have our fully pressed together new ball of clay. So I'm gonna walk over to the pug mill and get started. First off, we're gonna take these off, little covers to make sure that it doesn't dry out. Gonna grab this, squeeze it, get that top layer off, and just set it to the side, push it all together, and then just stick it in there. If you want to look in there and see how it looks, I'm gonna come over to the side and push the on button. There are only 2 buttons, so it's super easy to work with. After it's in here, I'm not gonna do anything but turn the lid and let it go. You can see that the lid is already coming down. Just off of the weight of the lid, it's gonna easily push it down. I really don't have to do anything, and then you see it coming out. So the pug meal, in the way that it works, it has 2 spinny machine mechanism little arm thingies. I really don't know. It spins just like this and it mixes the clay all together. That way we have that soft and that hard clay mixed together. Then in this portion right here, it's gonna suck out all of that air. That way when it's coming out, it's gonna be fresh, hugged, fresh from the bag pretty much clay. So the purpose of the shimpo and the pug meal all together is so that I can recycle the clay from what I use at the wheel from what isn't being used anymore. Now that I have my turd looking clay, I'm gonna stick it in there. Push it kind of down right in the middle of those 2 little spinny thingies and just let it go. I'm gonna let the machine do its job and you just sit back and smoke a cigarette, I guess. All right, so we see it's hugged out up here. I'm gonna just use the tool that's already attached. Push it down, and there it is. So you can see once I've cut it off that there are really no air bubbles. We are over at our wedging board. It's a little dirty, but that's okay because we only use 1 thing of clay. I use Maryland's bod, and it's just an earthenware. It's pretty dense, which is why I like it, because you can pull really thin walls and it'll still stay up. It's really sturdy, and I actually do like the color of it. This is how it looks once it's fired. I don't have any right here. You can see as it's fired, here's some raw clay, and here it is with some glaze, 2 different glazes on it, but you can see how it kind of changes after it's fired and put in 2000 degrees. All right, so instead of a cutoff wire and having to buy it, at least like 4 of them, I just use some fishing wire. It's really thin, which I really like, because then when you're cutting it off the board, it doesn't take a lot off of your bottom. There are 3 little prongs at the end. Just come off and pull it. Then I got my cutoff wire. And then I'm gonna come in and cut it off. So cool. After I've cut it off, I'm actually gonna weigh it with my handy dandy scale. I'm gonna be throwing a vase, so I gotta know how much clay to use. I'm gonna try to shoot for about 2 pounds. And it's actually got 205. So I'm actually gonna keep it there because why not? Let's just go throw it, right? Now with this piece, you could either cut it off as to whatever you want, or you could just save it. Any kind of plastic will help preserve the clay. So that's really the only reason to do that, is so that it won't dry out. Now, to wedge. What I'm gonna do is use the bottom part of my hand, the most sturdy part. And because this table is taller than me, I'm gonna go on my tippy toes and I'm gonna get my heels of my hands. I'm gonna push while my fingers pull and turn. So I'm gonna push, whoa, and then I'm gonna turn. I'm gonna push and I'm gonna turn. Push, turn. Okay, and so what I'm doing is I'm pushing and then I'm pulling it back. Pull and turn and push. What you want to get is like a rose or a circle. You'll start to see a rose type shape form. And what this does is gets all the air bubbles out. And then from there, I'm gonna just hit it on there. I'm gonna start to form a cube. And there's my cube. The only reason we make it into a cube is because then it's really easy to make it into a circle. You've got your ball. So that was wedging. Now we're gonna go over to the wheel. All right, let's get started. I always just keep my bats over here on the side. It's really easy to pick them up. But I just have my square bat. I like to use a bat, that way I can take it off, use another bat, and just keep throwing. Gonna get my water. Get what was on there before off. I'm gonna use my tool. It is just a wooden trim tool. You can see that it's kind of pointy and it has a little sharp edge. What I'm gonna do with everything is use both of my hands. I'm just gonna push my finger and my thumb on there. And that's really it, and that's to help me keep it stable. So from there, all right, so from there I'm gonna get the bat kind of wet, just a little bit. Get my ball of clay that we just made, slap it right into the center, okay? And then I'm gonna push it down so that it stays on there. Give it some good slaps. The first stage is always called centering. So to center it, I'm gonna have my bottom hand of my dominant hand, which is my right hand, on the top of it, and the back part of my left hand, my non-dominant hand, on the back of it. Okay, so ultimately it's gonna look like this, and I'm pretty much always gonna have my hands pushed together. Also, another tip, I like to keep my elbow right in here, right on my rib cage, pretty much, and also on my hip. I'm gonna push it right on my hip right here. Right here, go down, use the sponge with lots of water, get it nice and wet. I'm gonna use the back side and the underside. I'm gonna push down as I'm pushing away from myself. So you can see how it's starting to form right in the center, which is why it's called centering. Now you start to see this little hole in there. So all we're gonna do is pull it out. Pull it out to the side and out of our lives. I'm gonna get all of those air bubbles out of there. So to do that, you're gonna cone up. So what you're gonna do is get water on there, push away from you. Make sure that that top part with your thumb is not caving in. You can also use the top part of your hand again, come on the outside of it, and press up. Press up. I'm also using somewhat of my fingertips to press into my hand. My thumbs aren't really on it yet. Here they go, so that I can get the top nice and straight. Now that it's somewhat coned up, you could go a lot further and make it real skinny if you think that you have a lot of air bubbles, but it doesn't really feel like we do. And you'll see that my hands are pretty much always working together. You don't really have one without the other. The way you can tell if your piece is centered or not, close your eyes. If your hands are moving all over the place, which they're not really, it doesn't feel like it, then you know it's centered. If your hands are all over the place and your eyes are closed, it's not centered. So since I know it's centered and I'm ready to move on, all you're gonna do is stick your finger right in the middle. You see how my hands are always together and on the board. Okay, so my thumbs are touching and my thumb is on my next hand, while this hand is against the clay and against the board. That way I'm never like moving around and unstable. I have a flat back and I'm not arching over and trying to get up in there, because then you don't have any stability. So what you're gonna do, stay strong and just push it down. You really just use that long finger, is pulled back towards you. Now what we're gonna do is recenter it just by pulling it in just a little bit like we did when we coned up. So what I'm gonna do is just push where I feel a lot of clay. And again, I have my hands both together. I'm always touching my thumbs together. And I always have my arms fully tucked into my body. Push my fingers and pull up. Once you can reach your thumb in your other hand, do it. Now you can see that I got most of the clay up on that one. And really you shouldn't be spending too much time on such a small vase on pulling. You should kind of get it up as soon as you can. So I'm gonna use my next tool, the little wooden, not wooden, it's a rubber rib. I'm gonna push the smaller end down, and I use this little hole to put my fingers in. That way I can really get a good grip of it. And there we have our vase, but we're not done yet. We gotta cut it off. So I'm gonna get my wooden trim tool again. I'm gonna put my left hand on the back this time and against my thumb. That way I still have sturdy hands, and I'm not gonna cut too much off, just a little bit to make it look better. I'm just gonna push it all the way down onto the bat and pull it off. So I'm gonna wrap this around my fingers and I'm gonna push it down all the way onto the wheel using just my thumbs. Okay, and then I'm gonna just hold it here as I circle the wheel and pull it back towards me. Okay, we're done with this. We can just pull that off now. And then take the bat off. And there's a vase. Pretty, isn't she? Thanks for coming in, Potheads. See you guys next week.